I love it. Already I'm like, I never want to touch a mouse ever again when it comes to running a register. The iPad is so great. I love the touchscreen. I love the layout. I love Shopify POS as an app. It's so sweet.
Come on and visit for any occasion. Don't keep patting down waiting. Comics and conversation. Keep the conversation moving along. Keep reading comics. Keep your local store strong. If it's hard, then it's a job for the challengers. Comics and conversation, y'all.
From Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, this is Contest of Challengers, a comics industry business podcast with Patrick Brower and W. Dal Bush.
They're party anthems, Dal, because it is New Year's. It is 2022 in London,
England.
As we are recording this. It is not 2022 for us,
No.
but it is 2022 for anyone who is listening.
It's true, yeah. I hope so. I mean, it could be even later than that. I don't know what year the people are listening to this.
Oh no, I'm coughing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to make it to 2022.
Yep.
Well, you have Molly Jane now. You're fine.
Okay.
You don't need me. You know how to drive my car.
I mean, no, Patrick.
Thought you'd be a little bit more.
No, come on.
What do you want to start with this week, Dal?
Let's just get into the stuff.
Okay, great.
Let's
So
not make people wait.
here's my customer interactions for the day.
I'm ready for it.
Oh, one, and I want to point out, we're recording this, like we just said, it is December 31st, 2021. COVID has been a life-altering factor since March of 2020.
It's true.
We're close to 2 years. So when somebody opens the door without a mask on and I say, hey, you got to have a mask, and they say, they just move their hand in front of their face like they're John Cena and I can't see them, and mumble something, I'm like, you got to have a mask. He's like, mask? I'm like, yeah, you got to have one. No, I was asking if you had one. You weren't.
Yeah, you were gesturing to the vicinity of your face.
And also, no. No, we don't. You know why? Because you should have one.
It's December 2021.
Because it's December 31st, 2021. I'm tired of this being a thing. And granted, it's so minor that we have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. It is maybe once, twice a week total, right, which is incredibly low.
Right.
Usually when mail people come into the store, mail carriers, letter carriers, they're not wearing a mask.
Nope.
Because they just run in, drop stuff off, run out.
Yeah, because they're outside the majority of their day.
Yeah. So mail carrier runs in, drops off some stuff. I'm like, hey, can you take this stack of books, this stack of mail? And they say, yes. And they put it down. They said, can I look around? I'm like, yeah. And as I'm going to say, but you got to wear a mask, she says, great. Runs out to her truck, comes back in with a mask.
Oh, fantastic.
Then she's looking around for a little bit and comes back up and says, do you take Apple Pay?
We sure do.
Yeah, of course. Eyes get wide, runs back out to the floor. So, wonderful mail person interaction.
Nice.
I was helping somebody else when they checked out. I didn't see what they got, but they bought stuff.
Cool.
That was cool. But the weirdest interaction was earlier in the day when a police SUV pulled up out front, threw on their lights, double parked, and an officer of the law came in.
Okay.
And said to us, "Oh, let me rephrase that. I am telling the story a little out of order just to give you the impact."
Sure.
Got out of the car, walked to the front of the store, was in front of the first bank of 3 windows.
Okay.
And was looking off further down.
Further north?
Further south.
South, okay.
And then a gentleman comes up from a point where we weren't seeing in a brown leather coat and was talking to the officer. Then the officer comes in and says, "Is there a cell phone in here?" And I said, yeah, we each have phones.
Yeah.
No, is there an iPhone here? Like, yeah, we each have an iPhone. So earlier, a guy had poked his head in the door and said, he was saying something about an iPhone, which what he was trying to say was, I can't find my phone. Did anybody find a phone in the store?
Sure.
The weird thing is that we didn't recognize him as someone who'd been in the store.
Okay.
And what's even weirder is when I went to go pull up the security footage to see at what point he would have been in the store, that camera mysteriously wouldn't show any previous footage.
Oh, weird.
Other cameras would.
Sure.
So I just pulled up other random cameras and would scroll through them like, I never saw that guy in here.
Right.
But he poked his head in and said, basically he lost his iPhone. He wanted to know if someone turned it in.
Okay.
We said, no, man, sorry.
Yeah.
He walked away. He called the police
Uh-huh.
because he lost his phone in our store and we weren't giving it back. And also, when he asked us and we said no, he was tracking his phone on what device, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the second he asked us, the second he left the store after we said we didn't have it, the phone turned off. So it's in our store.
This is all super verifiable stuff.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So this what do they call Ken? What are they called? No. The male Karen. There's a name.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. So some people are saying Ken, but it's not Ken. So this person, and what I tried to express to the officer, and whenever you say no, I'm trustworthy, it sounds wrong.
Right.
But if anybody who's ever left behind in the store hat, gloves, scarf, glasses, wallet, single credit card, train car, keychain, we hold on to that stuff way too fucking long.
Yeah.
We keep that stuff. We'll keep like hats and gloves for weeks.
Right.
Until we just say, well, forget it.
Yeah.
And pitch it.
If we found a phone, we weren't just going to like throw it in the garbage or
No.
whatever.
And if we find somebody's wallet and if it has like an ID in it, we'll look them up on Facebook and try to message and say, hey, we got your wallet.
Uh-huh.
Like the number of times we've held things for people is, well, it's not a huge number, but it's every time we get something, we keep it.
Right.
We hold it we don't keep it ourselves.
Right.
We hold it for the person. So to have this person, and like trying to explain to this cop, no, we don't steal things.
No.
How do you say that without sounding like an idiot?
Yeah. It's kind of impossible.
How do you say, no, we always give things back? Look, ask nobody who's in the store right now.
Right.
Because when she came in, nobody was here.
Right.
So she's like, is there anybody else in the store? I'm like, no, it's just us. And there's no phone. I'm like, look, if it fell out on the floor and somebody else picked it up and left, maybe that happened.
Yeah.
We have no idea.
No control over that.
We did not find a phone. Nobody turned a phone in.
Right.
We don't see a phone anywhere in the store right now.
Yeah.
If somebody, look, we don't want your phone, man. We all
Right.
have our own phones.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Like the idea of even stealing phones, like who can steal a phone because you can shut that thing down?
Yeah, it definitely as soon as a lot of things like the various like Apple locking mechanisms like Face ID and Touch ID. I don't want to say it eliminated cell phone theft, but it was certainly way less profitable to steal phones because they're just harder to get into.
Yeah.
Once they're out of your possession, it's hard to crack into them.
And what's the point? Like I don't know, but it's just so annoying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he wasn't in the store. I'm just saying neither of us recognized him, but we did have.
Well, and it's super duper weird. We've had people come in like, hey, I got home and I couldn't find my wallet or I couldn't find whatever. And we'll say, hey, you're welcome to look around. We haven't found anything. No one's turned anything in. And people are like, okay, cool. It must have been someplace else.
Yeah,
this guy to be like, it absolutely had to be at this store and they're hiding it from me.
And when he came back to ask us, he just stood in the doorway and asked.
Right.
It's like, retrace your steps.
Yeah.
I don't know where you went.
You can look around.
Yeah.
Go be my guest. Yeah, very weird to have the
Calls
accusation.
the police.
That's real weird.
I mean, I'm assuming he called 911.
That's insane. That is an insane thing to do.
I've seen really stupid videos online where entitled white people call the police, literally call 911 because a poor, not a trodden upon, not a destitute worker at a store is trying to enforce the mask mandate for their state, and this person calls 911 because their civil rights are being impeached.
Not what 911's for.
No.
Not for your civil rights.
I watched one where the woman on the phone was saying to the 911 operator, "You're the first 911 operator I've ever called who doesn't understand what I'm trying to say." And I thought, how many times have you called 911 on this mask
That's a
thing?
lot.
Well, I'm going to call and so list all these names, and I know you don't know who they are, but I do, and they're going to help me, and blah, blah, blah. And so basically, like, I'm not going to finish. It was so stupid. But why, you called, like...
That's pretty crazy.
If I grabbed your phone out of your hand and ran away, yeah, call the police.
Right. But if you can't find something, I don't know that you're allowed to call 911 emergency services specifically to be like, help me find this thing. I don't think that's what emergency services are for, unless the thing you're missing is, like, your child. Then you can call 911.
Yeah, if I steal your child, call the police on me.
Yes.
Also, I'm not keeping it. I'm absolutely not keeping it.
Not even steal, though, lost. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You lost something. It wasn't stolen. You just can't find it.
Yeah?
Yeah, the only circumstance when you can call 911 is if the thing that you lost is a child.
Yeah. Maybe an extremely poisonous snake. Then you call them to alert somebody else, like a handler or something.
Yeah, like some sort of animal control specialist.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't know who to call.
Yeah, or like if you lost a buffalo.
What if that dude lost a poisonous snake in the store, but he called it my phone? Have you seen my phone?
Yeah. They're keeping my phone from me. I was tracking my phone.
They have my phone.
Yeah.
Someone turned my phone off.
Yeah. It's weird. So with it up to that point, then I feel like it probably can't be a poisonous snake.
I won't say what it means. Oh my goodness. Dal, we had someone mention that they really enjoy us recommending new or upcoming comics on the podcast.
Oh, neat.
So I said that's a thing that we would continue doing.
Absolutely.
Only my to-read stack is so ridiculous.
Yeah, and one of the problems I have is that because of the holidays and where FOC's landed, we haven't really gotten any review copies of anything.
Yeah, so I read...
Not really.
I went through the DC PDFs.
I haven't in like a week or so.
And...
I think the last thing I read as a PDF there was, I think, Batgirl's #1.
And more they're doing this thing, which I find very annoying.
Unfinished copies?
Unfinished copies.
Don't want to do that.
Hey, they've got the Garth Ennis Peacemaker special up, but it's just the inks.
Yeah, here's Batman 118. Only line art, no dialogue.
Yeah.
That doesn't help me
Don't
at
give me
all.
that. So I will say that I did read some new DC books. Unfortunately, I can't recommend any of them.
Okay. The only #1 I read for this next week's stuff from... I only have Marvel stuff. I haven't looked at the DC stuff yet. Was Elektra Black, White, and Blood #1.
Yeah.
Like all those anthologies, it kind of lives and dies based on the contributors.
Yeah.
The second of the 3 stories is written and drawn by Leonardo Romero.
Okay.
So it's real pretty. The stories are all, I don't know, man, it depends on how much you care about Elektra. Like, I like Elektra in the current Daredevil comic, but solo stories of, of Elektra as a ninja assassin, taking out people for hits, like, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But the Leonardo Romero story is real good. The lead story is it Charles Soule? I have it over here. The art's by Mark Bagley.
It doesn't sound like a legitimate
It's by Mark Bagley. Yeah, Charles Soule. And then Declan Shalvey writes the last story, but he doesn't draw it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of a sucker for those kind of art-driven anthologies. Your Batman Black and Whites, your Black, White, and Blood series, your Red and Blues.
Your Black and Golds.
Yeah, I think those are generally interesting, and I one of the few things, miniseries-wise, that I read every single issue. Because there's usually something to recommend them, so I think those are fun. The nice thing about the Marvel ones is that they're a little cheaper. A few less stories per issue.
And also not square-bound, because I think it's easier to read
true.
Those books when you can lay them flat.
For sure. What else did I read from this week? Inferno #4, which I thought was a really good conclusion to that miniseries.
Yeah. Was it a good bookend for...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's got some really fun callbacks to House of X, Powers of 10. You can read it as, like, Hickman's last statement on the X-Men, or you can read it as Hickman's last statement for now, and maybe he comes back in a few years with some other ideas when the line needs more of a refresh.
I feel like if you read it as his final statement, it almost closes the door on what he was doing, and it makes the books that they're continuing to put out now a bit more superfluous.
I would disagree with that, because
Well, that's only if you take it as...
Well, no, but I mean, even if it's his final statement on it, I think the thing that a lot of... what you're generally doing for superhero books is maybe ending kind of a portion of the narrative and then leaving things for the next team to explore. You're not giving them a roadmap, but you're like, here's a status quo that could be kind of fun if you want to deal with it. Or if you don't, you can blow it all up and start over. That's what I did. Yeah, it definitely makes for some interesting decisions for how things are going to progress in the next phase of the X-Men books. And far from feeling like the end of the good era of the X-Men, it's just like, oh, this is like a transition phase, and we're going to still get some good stuff with the consequences of Inferno.
Okay, so he definitely brought Maggot into that, right?
I don't want to say, but yes, the whole issue's a Maggot issue.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Where's Maggot been this whole time? Oh, we'll find out in Inferno 4.
Yeah, I was asking that just like a week ago, and Inferno 4 answered my questions. Spoilers, Maggot's not in it at all. No, I don't want.
Why would you say that? I haven't read it.
Because I don't want any Maggot fans listening to this in advance of the release of the issue going, oh my God, I have to put that on my list. Don't. It's $6 or whatever it costs.
Hey, this is the point in the episode where we like to thank all of our patrons this month.
Including our annual patrons, Becca Hilburn and Joseph Coco, Brent Helt, Dal's mom Diane Bush, Jose Villagomez, Josh Crawley of Westfield Comics, Michael Romanenko, our patrons that have created their own tier, Andrew Drewtroit Comics Aaliyah, Christina McChrystal, Bridget K. Neville, Chris Burton, our other generous patrons from the Say My Name tier, Arun Singh, Social Media Vampire Ben-Hur Benedict Calaguas, Bradley Rader, Braden, Brian Garside from Manage Comics, Christopher Haith, Drew Triner and Ashley Edwards, Challengers Reservist Fallon Mackerline, my brother George W. Brower, Heidi D., Jacob Sorelli of Kamikaze in Tel Aviv, from 11 O'Clock Comics, Jason Wood, Jay Johnson, Josh Trigg, Mark Hammond of All Yeah Comics, Margie, Keith, Logan, and Malcolm Springham, Marcus Nasso, Matt Armstrong, Mitchell Davies of All-Star Comics in Melbourne, Australia, Morgan Kaiju Perry, Nick Baldwin, Robert Burns, Ron Payne, Ryan Alcock, Ryan Hecht, Sean Bowers, Tad Eggleston and Johnny Williams, Thomas Nagovin of Century Guild, Walt Grogan. And if you would like to hear your name thanked once a month on this very podcast, head over to patreon.com/challengers and pledge at the $5 Say My Name level. Thank you all very much, and a big thanks to all of our other patrons who generously support this podcast at different pledge tiers. How would someone who shops at Challengers...
I shop at Challengers.
...put that book, Maggot or No Maggot...
Inferno number 4.
...on their list?
Well, Inferno number 4 they couldn't necessarily put on the list because we've passed the FOC date for that book, so they'd probably have to request it from us personally. However, if they wanted to add books in general to their subscription list, they could do it through our Managed Comics integration on our Shopify storefront, because we are now using Shopify POS and Managed Comics.
I made a joke to Dal that we should not at all talk about Managed Comics this week, just ignore it.
Why, Patrick?
And just talk about other things.
Why would we do that?
I suggested it mainly because I thought it might drive Brian Garside crazy.
It would. It definitely would.
But I also know that he's heard from us enough this week. And when I say enough, I don't mean he's not going to hear more.
No.
I just mean he's heard a lot from you specifically.
It's true. We have been in direct contact far more often this week than we ever have in the past.
But as a fan of this show and a patron, thank you.
Well,
he's heard us
I
talk
don't want to
about
put words in his mouth.
Managed Comics before, and I think there's a difference in how we talk about it to him, to how we will talk about it to the public.
Yeah.
And I figured he'd be very interested in that.
Sure.
And I thought it would be funny, i.e. mean, meaning to me funny.
Yeah, same word.
To not bring it up at all.
Yeah, and then you had said, and then immediately record like an actual like Managed Comics episode
to put out a few days later.
To have in the future.
Not immediately, but just to have
we
it.
would record it immediately.
Yeah,
it would be released between episodes.
But that means more work for me.
It
so,
does, and who wants that?
Patrick,
we got enough work on our plate right
There's
now.
enough work.
That's a segue for you.
Yeah. Actually, I liked my Inferno segue, but you had to immediately shut it down with, you can't, it's the wrong one.
Uh-huh.
And I just meant a generic.
That's the details, though.
That's true.
And the devil's in the details, as we're finding out with Shopify and Managed Comics.
So it's an interesting situation because it started with data migration on Monday from our existing point-of-sale system to Managed Comics, which in Shopify, which are now our existing programs.
Technically, it started weeks before. We had been on a roadmap to switch over to Shopify POS and Managed Comics.
I want to jump in right here and say that this is so heavily researched. And, I mean, just the thought streams and the roadmap to this.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
This wasn't... I mean, when we started using ComicSuite, we had nothing else. But this is... You know, we've tried other systems and rejected them
immediately,
and then this was
immediately.
We're slowly gathering information, and even for the months leading up to this, we talk about it tentatively. It's like maybe we're switching, maybe we're doing this. When in the back of our heads, we're like, God, we want this to work so bad.
Yeah, there were so many
maybe
positives in the preparation phase. We were very excited about it. We spent a lot of time kind of getting our data as ready as we could and working more with Shopify, which was our online storefront, and prepping a lot of stuff for there so we could more readily switch over to using essentially the online storefront database, which was separate from our in-store database, as our in-store database.
But I wanted to say, before we really get into the meat of it, that nobody understands the sheer amount of work you have done for this, and
then Jesus
are continuing to do.
To whom I pray to every night.
And will continue
Help
to do.
Me, Jesus.
And if this was just me in the store, this would never happen.
Uh-huh.
I would have no idea. We started this process Monday. I really didn't get to play with it till Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Then I was off Thursday. Mm-hmm. And today was my first day by myself.
True.
So today was a lot of, well, how do I do this?
Uh-huh.
Let me figure this out. Yep. And I took like 2 quick little videos of Dal doing things, but as I stream music from my phone, I don't want to... When I had a question, I'm like, oh, it's in the video. I'm like, well, I can't play that, otherwise it plays throughout the store.
What if you incorporated my explanation videos, my explainers, into audio tracks?
I mean, it could really work with...
remixed it into like a club track.
Like a Calvin Harris lever generator kind of track for sure.
Great. I was going to say exactly that. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know you're a big Calvin Harris fan.
Yeah.
So it could be done. Mm-hmm. But I just want people to realize that Brian Garside is a saint.
He's a good guy.
For how much he has to deal with us this week.
I don't know that he realized what he was getting himself
into. For how willing he is to be so adaptive to the needs of one store.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be kind of all over the place in this because as we say things, we'll think of little details that we'll want to bring up. But one of the best parts of how many things were unexpected this week was that every time we would go to Brian and say this isn't working right, or we don't understand this, or we think it should be this other way, he would listen. He'd hear us out. There wasn't okay, challengers, do it a different way now.
Yeah.
Or, Managed Comics just doesn't do that, period, end of sentence. Like, there was a variety of, like, we didn't see that before, so we should probably do it that way, or that's a thing that we didn't think we need to do, but we can put that on the roadmap to make that happen, or that's a thing we were going to do later, but we should probably do it a lot earlier, or, any number of things where he was kind of taking it on board as something where it's like, either we can get that to work for you challengers, or that's the way it should work for Managed Comics going forward. There was a sense of like, this is still a work in progress and we are all collaborating on something together to make it as good as it can possibly be, which is something for us that gets a lot of like emotional buy-in for the process. Like it's difficult to do this and we need to feel like we all want the same thing.
We are comic book retailers, so we are used to being treated as third-class citizens by our publishing partners, by our distributors, by so many other facets of the general public.
In fairness, comic retailers as a class of people are ridiculous.
Sure. But, like, we're not used to just... I'll bring up the Immortal Hulk for a moment. Marvel Comics had a misprint in Immortal Hulk graphic novel volume 10, where pages are printed out of order.
Yeah, there's a gatefold that should occur in the middle of the final chapter, but the printing for the graphic novel has it
way at the end.
Way later in the story.
Yeah.
After it's missed the point.
Yeah. So, we got the copies in, sold a couple, found out there was this error.
Yeah, Penguin Random House put out a notification saying, hey, by the way...
Yeah, Penguin Random House. It said, hey, there's a mistake. Yep. Great. So we had to wait until we got the 2 subscriber copies back. Yep. One came back today.
Yeah, they had said in the notification of the misprint that we would basically need to send them an email citing the invoice number, the ISBNs, the number of copies. And it's always, just as a real quick parenthetical, I hate that every time I email Penguin Random House about something, I always have to give them tons of documentation that I feel like they could get pretty easily.
Yeah.
I have to dig for it in a way where it's like, you're sitting at a Penguin Random House database all day. For me to have to dig through your files to figure out, like, the corresponding purchase order number or whatever, it's a pain. I don't like it.
I'm going to take that a step further. We had a poster order that we had put in right before Christmas, knowing how well our posters were stocking. We were just restocking.
Right.
And when the order came in, there were 67 posters in the order that we did not order.
In place of 67 that we did order.
Exactly. So there was a lot of errors.
2/3 of it were wrong.
But then we had to give them the stock numbers of all 67 of those posters. And that takes time and effort and energy. Yep. And again, it's like, well, that's the thing, like, they probably have no idea of what they gave us. Yeah. But it's just a matter of, like, okay, so now we have to give you all that data. Right. But what you were saying relates to how I always complain about talking to attorneys or saying things like people asking a question, like, it's in this chain.
Yep.
It's already in there.
Yep.
But this whole time when we're doing that with those Hulk graphic novels, we're dealing with a blanket customer service email.
Right.
We're not dealing with a person. We don't have a rep for that. So when the replacement copies come in...
Yeah, and so this is the thing. They had said on the initial announcement, like, send an email about the misprinted copies if you have any, and then you can reorder it immediately because we've got corrected copies already in stock. And when I saw that, originally I was like, God damn, they already have corrected copies. Like, that's super fast. This book came out like a week ago. Like, not even. It shipped out a week ago.
Yeah.
And then we got our replacement copies in a couple weeks later.
And they're all still the wrong printing error.
Every single one of them is the wrong printing.
But
every single one of them is wrong.
So then I had to send another email to a blanket customer service rep with all that extra information.
Yep.
And that is typical of everything we do in the industry in regards to talking to distributors. There's no direct communication.
Right.
So to be able to talk to the creator of this program one-on-one regularly...
Yes. We've definitely abused that.
It's spoiling us.
It is.
And it's making us wonder why we can't do this with everything.
Yeah. So we spent the week switching over. Let me to break down what we're replacing for people who might not be familiar with the different terminology. Prior to this, we used an in-store database program called RMH.
Retail Management Hero.
Yes. RMH previously was something called RMS, Retail Management Systems, which was designed by Microsoft. Microsoft got out of the business of providing store management software. They sold that code to somebody else, who then upgraded it to RMH.
And it's just a blanket register program for checking out of products.
It's totally generic. I've used it. I've been using it in one form or another for over 20 years. A long time. Well in advance of ComicSuite.
Well in advance of Challengers.
Yeah. ComicSuite was Diamond's comic shop specific subscription management add-on to RMS and RMH.
It's a way to take the Retail Management Hero program and adapt it to the comics industry.
Yeah.
Specifically for subscriptions, for the vendors,
right. for receiving product from Diamond, for tracking subscriptions, for pulling things for people, for all that sort of, you get a Diamond order in and you receive it all and it goes into your inventory and it goes into subscribers' boxes. It does all that. A few years ago, Diamond also created another program called Pullbox. Pullbox was a cloud-based subscription management solution that integrated with a store's physical database. So basically it would exist kind of in the cloud, and then it would send stuff down to stores to let them know like what subscribers wanted to add to their subscription lists. So those were kind of the three things we were using. RMH, which was kind of the register system, and then ComicSuite, which was the subscription management tool, and then Pullbox, which was the
customer-facing aspect.
The cloud-based subscription management software. Those three things were all designed by Diamond, and they were great for receiving stuff from Diamond. If you got your stuff exclusively or the majority of your product from Diamond, they were great. Which means in 2018, they were great.
We started this whole journey with them after I was at a presentation in New York in February of 2009, and I came back and said, "Dad, we should really look into this. This is really good. I liked what I saw."
The problem is in the last 2 years, as the comics distribution landscape has splintered, Diamond's all-in-one solution is kind of not great. They've had to play catch-up on DC moving to Lunar and UCS, and then eventually just Lunar. Marvel moving to Penguin Random House.
And then actually just Penguin.
Yeah. Stores like us, who are doing a lot more of our reorders through non-Diamond channels, Lunar, Penguin Random House, Hachette, Simon & Schuster, Ingram. Consortium, I think some people use, and then
Shortbox, Silver Sprocket,
Scholastic, Macmillan. So I mean, there's a lot of different vendors that you can get stuff from now, for different reasons, and it makes a thing that's kind of just built around Diamond's database and receiving product from Diamond kind of not as useful. That's above and beyond any number of things that don't work right kind of anymore because of how Diamond is not getting data as quickly as they used to. So things like the monthly catalog will roll out and it'll have every publisher but DC, and then 2 weeks later DC will eventually be integrated into the catalog because it took Diamond that long to get the data from Lunar and then to format it for their servers so that people on Pullbox and ComicSuite could use it. It was a huge hassle. More and more it's been not great, and it's Diamond. The logic behind ComicSuite and Pullbox and RMH is only getting things from Diamond, and that's not the market anymore. So we were looking for something different. We've been using Shopify, which is an online storefront, since early days of the pandemic.
If I'm going to jump in with a little bit of irony.
Yes.
That Shopify was an online storefront, a generic online storefront you can plug your business into.
Right.
And it was a thing that we had, and when I say we, I mean Dow specifically, had looked into even before the pandemic as a way to get a website online.
Yeah.
But it was just the amount of SKUs we have in the comics industry, it's impossible to do that from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, you get, a few dozen to a couple hundred new SKUs every week.
And when he first looked at it, he said, there's no way we can do this. It's the manpower involved in this would just be insane.
Yep.
And the upkeep is impossible.
Well,
during the early part of the pandemic,
as brick and mortar stores were realizing you have to have a customer facing website that can sell stuff
to be able to survive in a pandemic.
No one, there were lockdowns. People, in California, you could not go to a store. Stores were in Chicago as well. We were not allowed to be open to the public.
Diamond Comics rushed out a plugin that would basically act as a link between your store and your Shopify store.
Yeah.
A way for them to, for the Shopify store to pull all the product information from Diamond's own website.
Yeah, one of the weird things about Shopify is that a lot of what your data exists in is just tables. So you would upload essentially...
Is a table a field?
A table is like a spreadsheet.
Okay, yeah, okay. That's that.
So you would just upload to a specific Diamond page, which I think still exists, Diamond codes and quantities, and it would export out a spreadsheet formatted for Shopify. And you take that spreadsheet and you upload that through Shopify, and you have a storefront now with descriptions and prices and costs and weights and images and everything else. We had a Shopify storefront that looked pretty good in I think it was less than 72 hours.
Yeah.
It was pretty great.
And I've mentioned this before on the podcast in early days. I've seen a lot of other store Shopify websites, and I think ours looks really great.
Yeah, not to skip ahead, but hopefully in the coming months we'll find ways to make it even better. Now that we're using it a lot more often and paying a lot more attention to it, we have expectations, and we want to maximize what it can do for people and what it can offer.
I have a question, but I don't know if this is the right place for it. But I'm going to ask it anyway.
Go ahead.
So is up until now, was that storefront maintained via Diamond, or once... it's still linking all the information from it, or does it get uploaded to the site and then it's ours?
Okay, so basically how the initial setup worked was, again, you're creating a CSV file from your database. You're uploading that to Diamond. Diamond's spitting out a Shopify formatted spreadsheet that you then in turn upload to Shopify. Now you have a Shopify store. The problem we had in the early part was, okay, well, now you have two separate inventories, online and in store. They're not communicating with each other. So it was fine during the lockdown because no one could come into the store to buy anything. So if something sold off of the website, it was easy enough to just okay, well, let's adjust our in-store. We would ring it up on the register then.
Yeah.
So now the online and in-store are balancing, but you're kind of just acting as an intermediary. The problem was, once we were open to the public, it was impossible to balance those two inventories because basically, you'd maybe sell a couple things online, but you'd sell a ton of stuff in store.
Do you remember when you were trying to update PDFs every night?
Oh my God. Well, yeah. I mean, that actually predated
Shopify.
Yeah. But I mean, even afterwards, it was, I spent 2 nights maybe trying to do a thing where it's okay, let me at least reduce all the graphic novels we sold, and basically deciding we cannot track comic sales on Shopify because we're selling comics too fast. It would take me 6 hours every night to adjust the Shopify quantities for a part of our business that is not, we weren't selling a lot of single comics on Shopify.
No.
We're selling graphic novels.
Yep.
So we investigated, we found a thing called Octopus. And Octopus is what we were currently using.
Once again, we means Dal.
Octopus
Dal did all the work for this.
Would take the data from our RMH installation, upload that to Octopus, who would then shift it to Shopify. So when we sold something in store on RMH, Octopus would catch that and then adjust the quantity online, and then vice versa. When we would sell something on Shopify, it would then deduct that inventory from the in-store. So everything was constantly balancing. It was getting the information for individual items from our RMH database, which would have titles and images from Diamond and prices and costs and weights and all that sort of stuff. That's all stuff that we would never normally use, but every time we downloaded an item from a catalog or whatever from Diamond, all of that stuff was in the background somewhere. Yeah. So all of that stuff got pushed to Shopify. So that's what we were using for a while, and now we're using a few different things. Shopify POS, which is an iPad, an iPhone, only an Android maybe, version of a register system. It's not something we would have on a computer or something. You can only have it on a tablet or a phone. That's our register system now. It uses the same inventory database as Shopify's online storefront, but they are two separate products. We're also using Managed Comics, which is our subscription management plugin for Shopify. And we're using a program called Stocky, which is a really robust inventory management program for Shopify. Shopify, you can put in things like quantities and stuff. And you can have purchase orders, but a lot of the, like, setting stock levels where you're like, this is what I want to have in stock for Watchmen trades. You know, you don't just want to wait till you sell out, or you don't want it to say, like, oh, you usually sell this many, so now is the time to reorder. I want a specific, like, we should have 3 in stock. If we have less than 3, I want to order up to 3. So here's an analogy I'm going to give about kind of the pros and cons of the 2 separate systems, because now that we've used both, there are pros and cons to each. I was incredibly sick of RMH and ComicSuite and Pullbox because they were riddled with errors, and it was basically Diamond trying to take something that was only ever meant to work for Diamond to now work for other things. But they weren't rebuilding it from scratch. They were just patching things. They were plugging holes. They were sewing things onto it. And so it would frequently not work right. RMH was like a bowl of a few different kinds of cereal. You'd have a few different kinds of cereal, but they were all in one bowl.
I can tell you the few times I've tried to mix cereals, it doesn't ever taste good. You would think Count Chocula and Cocoa Pebbles together, glorious. No.
What RMH would have is the bowl was basically the database. All of the stuff was just in one bowl. And you would have different spoons. One spoon was the point of sale system. One spoon was RMH Manager, which was all of your like kind of back-end data. One spoon was ComicSuite. One spoon was Pullbox. So they were all kind of working off of one thing, which was kind of great. There was a sense of unification to everything. The downside of that is if one thing in that whole bowl was wrong, it's wrong everywhere, and you can't really fix it.
Every spoon is corrupted.
Yeah. The problem though, so and then that was RMH. What Shopify is, what Shopify Managed Comics and Stocky and Shopify POS are, it's like a tapas restaurant where everything is in individual little bowls and plates. Shopify POS is its own thing, and Shopify, the website is kind of its own thing, and Stocky is its own thing, and Managed Comics is its own thing. So you're kind of pulling things from each one as you kind of want to have a nice, diverse plate of stuff. But it means that you're frequently having to go back and forth to different bowls instead of just having everything in front of you that you want. That's the con for the Shopify stuff. The pro is we are in a process where we are getting to putting hopefully more stuff into one place, so we're able to eat it a little bit more efficiently instead of having to constantly go around and grab different things. The con for RMH was you have this bowl of cereal and you've got all these spoons and it's great until all of a sudden some of the spoons start changing into knives and forks and corn cob holders and straws, and you're like, okay, well, this is not, I can't get stuff out anymore. Like, depending on what I want to take out of the bowl, I could get a spoon or I could have a piece of string or something. Like, this is, you never knew what you were going to end up having to use and how well it was going to work at one time. So, yeah, Shopify POS, Managed Comics, Stocky, Shopify itself. The big problem that we have with it right now is how little everything kind of talks to each other. Managed Comics specifically, it is designed as a subscription management piece of software. It is like ComicSuite. It's just a little plug-in for a much larger system. The problem with that is that ComicSuite did a lot more things than Managed Comics does. You were able to kind of do more with back orders and sales data and stuff. And currently, Managed Comics isn't doing that. When we go to do FOCs and initial orders later this week, we're just going to be looking at like subscription numbers. We are both going to learn it. And Molly Jane's going to learn it too. So yeah, I mean, until that initial order thing is ready to go, hopefully at the end of the month, it's all we're doing is just like, all right, well, make sure you get the minimum number for subscribers, and then what quantity do you think you want to have on the shelf? Some of the solutions that Managed Comics has come up with to kind of get things in a way that you can use it, everything takes more steps than you want it to, and includes more kind of quirks than you would hope. like, for example, with RMH and ComicSuite, when we had subscribers come in, we would go to the register and we would hit F7 and there'd be a list of the subscribers. We'd click the subscriber that we wanted to bring into the transaction, and it would pull all their stuff in. You ring it up, you ring it out. It would track those sales. An individual item would have committed quantities and rack copies, and it would track all those sales. One of the weird things that Managed Comics does is that when you receive 50 copies of Batman, if you have 20 subscribers and 30 go to the shelf, it creates two different items in your database. Batman 119 and then Batman 119 subscriptions. You're not selling out of 50 copies of Batman. You're selling out of 30 copies of item A and 20 copies of item B.
Yeah.
So when you look at things like daily sales, it's difficult to see, like, how many am I actually selling? Because, again, there's two versions for everything. And just the process of currently the process of bringing subscriptions in, when you and I and Molly Jane had left on Wednesday, we had looked at the sales total for the day, and we're kind of shocked at what it was because it felt like it was so much busier. And then we realized, it's because everything took 3 times as long. Bringing something into the transactions on Shopify POS, you got to hit one button, and that takes you to the Managed Comics tab, and you go in and you find, you type in the name of the person you want.
Well, you have to hit a button to get to their
you hit the middle button for customer orders. And then
you type in their name.
You type in their name to filter it, and then you find their name, and you hit the little thing to bring their order in. And then that creates a draft order. And then, as a parenthetical to this, when it's creating a draft order, it's also sending an email to subscribers saying, hey, your order's ready to be paid for, even though they are about to pay for it on the point of sale.
Yep.
And that sucks.
Yep.
We already had one subscriber be like, why did I get this email? I bought my stuff already. And it's like, you did. We're not trying to double charge you. I don't like it either. So then you go to a different tile on the Shopify POS that's a completely separate program that you're paying for, that takes the draft order that was just created by Managed Comics and then pulls that into point of sale, because natively Shopify POS has no way to pull a draft order in. You can create draft orders and sell stuff via the website portion that you can look at on Chrome, but in point of sale, like, Shopify decided, no, you can't have those. There's a whole bunch that's wrong with Shopify POS that just basically boils down to they would rather have you buy a solution from someone else than actually solve the problem.
They make it themselves.
That you are paying them a fee for every single month. It's Shopify POS. I'd said to Brian this week, Shopify POS is great. If someone comes into your store, takes something off the shelf and wants to buy it, perfect. Works great. Anything besides that, more of a pain in the ass than you wanted.
Without me even mentioning that, Gina had found out quickly and vocalized how, wow, it's just so much easier when people buy things off the shelf.
Dead simple. So
that's
easy.
Not even counting things like tax accidentally being turned on. Not being able to mitigate the discount to the appropriate items.
Yeah, so one of the additional problems we found out this week, very early on Wednesday, and boy, the early parts of Wednesday were infuriating because we were finding all these things that we couldn't have found out before because we didn't receive books until Tuesday night.
Yeah.
This Wednesday morning was our first time with subscriptions, and we found a whole bunch of weird errors. The one that's still a killer that I know Brian's working on, but it's something that the draft order, the program that pushes the draft order that Managed Comics creates into Shopify POS. It's called like Draft Orders POS or something like that. It's a super generic name. The problem is what it's doing is, like, every item that we sell has a SKU. It has a specific identifier that links to something in the database, so that when you sell it, it knows the product type, it knows the any variables you might have on it. Like, Managed Comics does a thing where you're getting a discount on subscription items. It knows that the specific subscription item should get a discount. So instead of having to, like, do it at the end of the transaction or midway through, every item that gets pulled in should have a discount. But the problem is the draft orders thing is basically taking all of the item identifier data and stripping it all off. So all you have is a title that now doesn't connect to anything and a price. So all the things that we have on those items, like it should be tax exempt and you should get a discount, it doesn't have that. So we have to then item by item go in and turn off the taxes, because you can't make a transaction tax exempt. You have to make individual items tax exempt.
And also, you can't just push one button for taxes.
Because we're technically charging 3 taxes.
There's 3. There's 3 taxes.
Yep. City, state, and county.
Yep.
Are all different tax amounts. And then
that add up to $10.25.
And it's the same thing for the discount, where you can't just like flag a bunch of items and go, okay, all of these should get the discount, the rest shouldn't. It's either you do the discount on everything, which we do not want to do because that is not our policy, or you go into each item and while you're turning off the taxes, you then also apply a discount to it. And then at the end of the day, you find out that all of the SKU data that would tell it what product type you sold, so you can do your bookkeeping at the end of the day, that's gone too. So you now have a custom item and just a whole bunch of money you brought in.
Yeah.
That has
it's
no data attached to it.
Makes its own category called custom.
Yeah, and also, extra little detail. You know how I said that when you have 2 different items, you have like Batman 118 and Batman 118 subscription. So the extra problem is that when all that SKU data is being stripped out, it's stripping out the part that tells it should reduce the subscription quantities on hold.
Oh, no.
So those are all exactly the same as we received everything on Tuesday. So that's great. So a bunch of little errors like this, and it's all stuff that we've been talking to Brian about, and he is working on stuff. We found out, like we mentioned, that one of the first things you do when you go into the Manage Comics tab to bring in a subscription is you click over to the customer orders thing and then type in someone's name. The typing in someone's name thing is brand new, because we were looking at it Tuesday night and we're like, hey man,
how do you find a customer?
There's no way to filter or sort anything.
And the customers are in an order I can't figure out. It seems random, but I'm sure
it seemed utterly random. It seemed like how they were maybe like how it was populated just as a database, and it's like, okay, I can't find anyone. We have hundreds of subscribers on multiple pages. If I have to just scroll through randomly looking for someone's name, it's going to take 5 minutes for me to even get started on a transaction, let alone actually get through it. So, I mean, to Brian's amazing credit, Wednesday morning on the drive into the store, I was getting text message from him saying, I just tested it out. It's deployed. Here's what it looks like. And it's like, perfect, great. It saved us a ton of time on Wednesday. And that was something that he had not, when he's looking at a test version of a store, he only has a few customers. You know, we have hundreds of subscribers. So the amount of stuff, and there's a few things, there's a lot of like quality of life things that we've been figuring out and being like, hey, this is slow because it's kind of built for like 10 or 20 subscribers. You know, I like on the manager side of it, there's 2 separate pages for customer subscriptions. One that's the subscription stuff, one that's like pre-orders, special orders, that kind of thing. So if you have a subscription of Batman, it's on the first page. If you only order Batman 118, it's on the second page. The second page is way faster to navigate. You can bring up windows faster. You can type in item codes faster. You can confirm orders faster because there's a lot less data on it. On the subscription page, it's hundreds of subscribers, and they all have a ton of books. And doing anything on that page is slow as shit because it constantly has to deal with how much data is actually on the screen. So that's all stuff where we're talking to him about, like, there's got to be ways to drill down into this a lot faster. I mean, just the thing of, like, you are literally looking at a page of hundreds of subscribers in alphabetical order. If I need to add something for, you know, Todd Smith, I either have to scroll down for, like, 2 minutes to find Todd Smith, or since it's a Chrome page...
If you don't miss him.
I just go to find, and I have to type in Smith, and then I go, okay, here. Now, like, I shouldn't have to ever do that.
Right.
So, yeah, the process for the week was kind of not great. The migration has been a lot more labor-intensive than either us or Brian had intended.
Yeah, as of now, the majority of our graphic novel barcodes aren't in the system.
Yeah,
the products are.
Yeah, the barcodes don't scan, because it's a weird thing where Octopus was pushing a bad portion of Diamond's data to Shopify. Like, every Diamond thing has a SKU, and the SKU is like DCDL and then 6 digits, and that's an internal thing that Diamond has for every item Diamond's ever stocked. Then in the alias field, it'll have like the monthly code, like October 21, 2059. and then it'll have the ISBN, and it'll have the UPC. So, unfortunately, that stuff is not really in any order. It's just a hodgepodge of things. And when Octopus was pulling stuff out, it was pulling out the ISBN, but we don't scan that. We scan, like, the EAN +5, or the ISBN +5. So the majority of our graphic novels don't have the right barcodes attached to them. They have a piece of data that's correct for the book, but not what our barcode scanner is going to pick up. So we need to get that switched over. And that's the thing that has been more difficult for Managed Comics to deal with, because A, the size of our inventory, and B, they had never dealt with DCDL codes before. They had looked at a different diamond code, so they had to figure out what is a DCDL code and how do we deal with this. And it was the same thing for some of the stuff in our like special orders that we had for subscribers and subscription stuff. And a lot of stuff that got exported from ComicSuite had weird things that were going on with it. Like, one of the problems we've been fixing over the last 5 days is basically Managed Comics and ComicSuite deal with variant cover subscriptions in completely different ways.
So vastly different.
So, like, basically what you would do with ComicSuite is if you had a subscription to Batman, you could then go into the Batman subscription and say, okay, well, I don't want a subscription to the main cover. I want a subscription to the B cover every month. So then you would have something where it would have like a 0 quantity for the A cover, but a 1 quantity for the B cover. But when you're exporting that, all it just says is like Batman 0 and Batman 1, but it won't tell you what cover that is. So nobody was down for the B covers for anything starting this week. Like, that's something that I have been slowly having to go through ComicSuite by hand and switch everybody over who should be getting B's and C's and whatever covers. So basically anybody who got their books pulled this week, you just got the A cover. I'm sorry. Feel free to switch it out when you get to the store. So that was a thing that there's no way to export that. I had to go in by hand and do that. And it's the same thing for anyone who's getting the A and the B cover for anything. Like, they were just down for the A. The B cover, like, doing that in Managed Comics is a completely separate line item. You don't have a Batman subscription with multiple covers. You have a Batman cover A subscription and a Batman cover B subscription. So that's been a long process, made kind of longer by how slow it can be to enter stuff into Managed Comics right now. And then on top of that, it's going through and finding all the weird errors where certain people didn't have all their subscriptions carry over. There was no Odin's Eye for any subscriptions, so that's a thing that I had to add for 30-something people. Just a lot of little things like that, and that's on top of just the general, like, quirks of figuring out, like, again, these sort of siloed processes. Stocky does one thing, and Shopify does another, and Managed Comics does a third. Now when we receive reorders, we have to kind of do them on 3 different tiers. You do Stocky, and then if it's not in Stocky, you do it in Shopify. And if it's not in Shopify, you got to do it in Managed Comics. So, like, this is not an all-in-one solution. This is a grab bag of tools that will hopefully, over time, become more of an all-in-one solution. But right now, it's very frustrating to deal with how specific processes live in specific areas. And some of them do 75% of a process, and the other 25% is somewhere else. So it's a lot of stuff like that.
It's really fun.
It's really fun. But, I mean, here's the upshot. We're still committed to it. We used a different kind of point-of-sale subscription management system. And we used it for a couple hours, and then we quit.
Yeah.
We've been using Shopify Pos and Managed Comics since Monday morning, and we're still using it. And,
so for me personally, I'm getting used to a lot of it, and obviously it's repetition.
Right.
But what I'm really getting used to is the things that I need to do on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. I don't have half the knowledge of the system that you do. There's questions I'll be asking you when we're not recording. I'm like, how do I do this? Which is just a very common basic thing that I can't figure out.
Yeah.
And because there are 2 separate Shopify programs that we use, one is the management, one is the point of sale. Mm-hmm. and they have very similar apps, just a slightly different color.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's a matter of, is it this one or is it this one or is
Right.
it both or is it Managed Comics? Is it what to this? And while it is like, okay, fine, we have Shopify and we have Managed Comics and we have Stocky and we have the draft thing, but before we had Octopus, we had
Right.
I mean, it's all these other things. Just now that they're more coherent.
Yeah, I mean, but that said, like, the hope was that we would be getting something a lot more streamlined. Like, one of the big reasons we switched was we had Pullbox, that was this online subscription management thing, and we had the in-store database, and then we had Octopus that was pushing stuff. So it was already a thing where things were getting a lot more segmented, and we didn't have the feeling of, like, one set of data. Everything was getting a little more portioned out, and things were being dealt with in different ways. And the hope was that, okay, well, we're switching to Shopify, which means we don't have to worry about Octopus, we don't have to worry about Pullbox, we don't have to do... Like, we have this one thing, and it's like, but we don't because of how many stupid plugins.
Yeah.
And the plugins are each their own little program. Like, even Stocky, which is a thing that's included with your Shopify subscription to give you more control over your inventory management, that data is still separate. Like, it's using all of the Shopify stuff, but it is pushing and pulling data. When you go to Stocky, you can go, okay, well, I have this many on back order. But then when you go to the same item on Shopify, you have 0 on back order because technically you have 0 on back order in the Shopify program. Stocky program has a different one. And when you receive stuff, Stocky will sync the data. So when you receive 2 copies of something in Stocky, you'll see it sync up, and then you go into Shopify and it's got 2 copies. But like,
there's always an extra step.
Yeah, and it's that part of it is frustrating, and some of the frustration is just because, like, Shopify as a company is not trying to make this easy on you. Like, these are all things that Shopify 100% could do, and they just opted not to as a company policy. So it's cool that you have the opportunity to make the system whatever you want. There's any number of third-party solutions for anything you want to do. Which is great, and we'll be investigating a lot more of those in 2022 as we think of more things that we want to do and what we need in our store and what we need to offer to customers. Managed Comics is just essentially another one of those third-party solutions. But it just sucks that what you would think of as non-optional core functionality, Shopify is just like, no, we're not going to do that. I'd said before, and I don't remember if I mentioned this on last week's podcast, but when you have problems with Shopify products and you go searching for solutions and you type in like a problem you're having with Shopify on Google, very quickly in the results field, you will find a link to something on the forums, and the forum thing will be 6 pages of people saying, I can't believe this still isn't fixed yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. That's the solution for everything, is just, no, it's broken. They've known about it for years. Shopify won't even respond to anyone in the forum anymore. And everyone's solution is, go buy this other app. And that sucks. Like, if Brian was doing that with Managed Comics, if we were like, hey man, this thing doesn't work right, and he was like, oh, you can just go buy this other thing for $20 a month, and I'm never gonna fix it. Like, we're using the draft order thing now, which is essentially that. It's an additional thing we had to buy, but he's said a number of times, like, the roadmap is to not be using that.
Yeah,
to be,
and that's exciting.
To have, and that's the big benefit of the week. Like, this week was frustrating. This week was frustrating as hell. You and I both had stress dreams about...
Yes.
Mine was... Here's mine. My stress dream was... I was working at the place I used to work at, and there's basically, like, to use an AEW term, an accountability buddy, who is basically letting me know that the owners were unhappy with my work, and they did not trust me to do things like FOCs and initial orders anymore, and this person, it was a brand new person, it wasn't anyone in
They're just
particular.
going to need you to file back issues for a while.
They were having a real fun time laughing at me about how bad I was at my job, and how much they needed to take control of it. And I've had dreams where it's like, I don't know what that meant, but this one was
oh, I know exactly what this is.
I'm horrified that we're going to lose a ton of customers because things aren't great, and we don't know what we're doing, and we're going to, like... When Diamond had first split away, or when DC had first split away from Diamond, we had a screw up with how ComicSuite was pulling Batman 3 Jokers, and somebody had ordered Batman 3 Jokers cover A.
Yeah.
And the system just missed it. It was like, it didn't come up on the polls, and when we checked later, it's like, yep, it's still here in the system. It just didn't generate a poll for it. That dude does not shop with us anymore. He was furious. He did not appreciate our inability to explain why he didn't get it, and he did not care that it was a cover B or C on the shelf. That shit happens. It happens to stores all the time. You miss someone's books, and you can't make it right. Like, you can't get that book. You will lose a customer. So when stuff is, like, when we were in this kind of limbo state for a week of, like, essentially working day and night, and we were at the store an hour and a half late on Tuesday because we didn't get to start pulling the week's books for any vendors until, like, 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Well, Tuesday was so rough
Holy
because I came in not having worked Monday, and all the things you guys do on Mondays, couldn't do any of it.
Yeah, like, that was the big stress of the week was, like, I came in at 9 a.m. on Monday with the intention of, like, okay, cool, let's knock this out, and we'll be ready to go at 11. And it was like, the 11 o'clock was not until, like, 4 o'clock on Tuesday, and even then, a bunch of stuff we still can't scan graphic novels. Like,
Yeah.
I totally appreciate that Brian's working on it, and God bless him for going above and beyond to not only find a solution for it, but also work with a completely separate developer that he does not have a business relationship with to try and get this thing right. But end of the day, man, we can't scan graphic novels. And you know what we sold a lot of this week?
Graphic novels. It's weird to me, and I think because we know how many other stores have been using Managed Comics.
Right.
But I wonder if we're the only people that migrated over from ComicSuite.
I think you said one other store has.
Okay.
But
So, like, the problems that we are having are unique. Like, they haven't encountered these problems before.
I mean, we are still at a level, like, the amount of stores using Managed Comics is what I would, when he gave me the number, I would consider that beta stores.
Sure.
Like, I know you can buy Managed Comics or whatever as an app in the Shopify App Store, but, I mean, where this thing is at as a program, I would stress to people, is still very beta testy, with both the good and the bad of that. The bad of that is that you will immediately discover bugs that no one else had discovered because that's what beta tests are.
Right.
Some of them are tiny. Some of them are gigantic. Some of them are things where it's like the people designing the program literally never thought anyone would need to use the program in that specific way, and they need to figure out how to do that. Just as a hopefully a very quick aside, the big problem that I personally have with Managed Comics, in a sense of, like, I need to know that there's a roadmap for this, is kind of how it's dealing with back orders. As a store, as Challengers as a store, more than half of our business is what I would consider reorder business. Mm-hmm. It's not the week's books. It's things that people are buying from the graphic novel section, things that we've gotten back in stock. We need to have a way to monitor that inventory, to receive it, to understand what's on back order, to be able to, you know, order 20 books from a distributor and have 5 of them come in a month from now, and in that intervening month not have the system try and reorder 5 more copies because it thinks we don't have it. That's all stuff that, like, Stocky can do, but I need Managed Comics to do that. Because, and this is a thing that was getting really frustrating with how ComicSuite was dealing with receiving stuff from other distributors. Currently, the way we have to do it is new invoices, the week's books, if you will, get received in Managed Comics, but reorders get received in Stocky. It's 2 different things, and it means that new items are not dealt with correctly because you can't really put new items, brand new things, into Stocky. They have to already exist in your database. But Managed Comics is all about brand new things that are not in your database. So, like, if we had a way for Managed Comics to generate reorders, to understand what we're reordering, or to potentially to integrate with Stocky or something where it's able to understand, like, this is a purchase order, and when you're receiving it, you need to take away the back order. That's so crucial for us, and currently we are cobbling that together with multiple programs, and it sucks. Molly Jane picked up our dumb processes for receiving product through ComicSuite very quickly. She was trained on a Sunday, and on Thursday, she was receiving reorders. It was a thing that you and I could do, and no one else really ever picked up. and she got it immediately. This first week of Managed Comics on Thursday, she's like, I don't know how to receive this. Like, basically just was like, I can't understand how it's supposed to work. And that's bad. Like, that's a bad process if someone who can pick up the other thing looks at this one and is like, this is dumb. Like, I can repeat things to her and I can keep explaining, like, here's the 3 steps. But, like, it doesn't work right, and it's frustrating. And it's kind of just a function of Managed Comics is designed for subscription management. And that's its logic, and that's what it's doing. But, like, that's literally slightly less than half of our business. So it's great that it can do that part. I need it to do the other half. I need it real bad. Like, that's crucial to us. And I don't want to be a year from now still doing 3 steps in 3 different programs to receive a reorder. I don't want that.
I don't want to be pulling draft orders from a different program.
No, but that's the stuff that, like, that's a more immediate concern. And I think they're going to fix that.
No, I know, but I'm just like, since we have a wish list.
Sure, but I mean, that's the beta test portion of it that's the positive, is a lot of this stuff is changing very rapidly, for the better. Things are getting a little smarter. Things are getting a little easier to use. I mean, this program between Monday and Wednesday became easier for us to use. So, like, that's how quickly things are changing.
Gina today pointed out that she thinks that another coworker of ours may be stressing about having to learn this already. And after working today, Gina said, yeah, I don't know that she's going to like this. And I said, she hasn't worked for 3 more weeks. It'll be different.
Yeah, hopefully.
It'll be very different by then.
So, yeah, it's a sort of program where the things that are working against us are basically having 12 years worth of data that we have to still have continuity with. If you're a brand new store, if you're just getting started, if you've got, not a ton of books or not a ton of subscribers, Managed Comics is amazing.
Yeah.
If we started from scratch, we would be in a so much better place.
Sure.
With all of our data. Like, the whole ISBN thing wouldn't have been a problem because they'd already be in the system. But unfortunately we didn't. So, like, what we're having to deal with is the migration part of it, and that's been a gigantic goddamn hassle.
Which it always is. I mean, I know in my personal life and my family life, I know several people whose jobs are just data migration.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's... And the good news is the next store that has to do a giant migration from ComicSuite and RMH to Managed Comics is going to have a lot easier of a time of it because we were the test case.
Yeah.
Brian knows how to get the data out of a SQL server, a database that he didn't know before. He knows where it lives in the different tables to get out, customer data and subscription data and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was a much more difficult week than I think anyone involved had anticipated. Certainly Brian, on the week between Christmas and New Year's when he's on vacation, did not think he would be troubleshooting this stuff for multiple days. The good news is I feel confident in where we're at right now with stability. This is a Friday night we're talking. On Saturday, I plan to have the subscriptions as tight as I can get them, and then I will be sending out an email to subscribers explaining the process. Positives for us so far. Again, the point of sale system, it's so good.
Yeah.
When it works, it's so goddamn good. I love ringing stuff up on that iPad.
How often do you find yourself going to phantom grab the mouse?
I never do. I love it. I'm like, I never want to touch a mouse ever again when it comes to running a register. The iPad is so great. I love the touchscreen. I love the layout. I love Shopify POS as an app. It's so sweet. I love how much data we have access to all of a sudden. You mentioned it earlier today when you were logging in reorder stuff. Is like, it's so cool you can see the pictures.
Yeah, that is such a wonderful benefit just when you're confused. The only time it's a mess up is, like, for example, when we have a new edition. Mm-hmm. Like somebody bought Marvels, but it was the new edition, or if somebody bought Smile, the $10 version of Smile is still in the database with the same picture.
Oh, okay.
But luckily it said out of stock, so I know that's the wrong one. You need the one up here that says new edition that's $12.
Yep. That stuff is all great. The back end portion, like making alterations to stuff in RMH, was always a gigantic hassle. It was very hard to do bulk changes to things. There were wizards for it, but it was never as intuitive as you'd want it to be. Shopify Manager, it's so easy to go in and like make, bulk changes to prices and tags and product vendors and all that stuff. That stuff's all great. Managed Comics is working out really well, I think, for a lot of our subscribers. I barely gave even a tutorial to anything.
Because he's a baby.
Uh-huh.
Go on.
No, I think we're gonna need to cut this part out.
I mean, we're just about done.
Okay.
Next week we'll go over in detail the customer facing aspects.
Yeah.
Like after you send this email, but more along the lines of what it looks like to them and what they do.
Sure.
And Gina did her previous order today by herself.
Yeah.
I logged her in on the left computer to show it to her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she did the rest of it on her phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, that'll be because I think it's important for people to really understand. Sure. Because it looks different. It looks so different.
And some of the logic behind it is different. I've already had a few people kind of doing things the ComicSuite way.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to add the subscription, but then I need to go in and pre-order the previous issues. You don't.
Yeah. So that we will get to next week. And I'm sorry I derailed what you're talking about with my nonsensical giggling over something that wasn't even part of this episode.
No.
I was just already silently laughing because of something you did right now, and that reminded me of something you said yesterday.
Yes.
That
2 days ago.
2 days ago. That set us both off.
More than me.
And it just came back. Obviously more than me. I started laughing about it again.
Obviously. But it's a quick summation. We are still using Managed Comics and Shopify Pos.
Yeah. This, like, for as much as it's frustrating for us,
Yeah.
this is just the building blocks. Like, we knew there would be issues. We didn't know what they were. Obviously, we couldn't predict what they were going to be, but we are still fully committed to this process, and it is the future for us. And, you know, when we started ComicSuite, we didn't know anything about it, and we kept it for 12 years.
Yeah, and that improved slowly over time. This is improving rapidly. And yeah, it's a thing where this week was way more work than we wanted it to be, but next week will be a little bit less work, and then a little bit less work, and hopefully in the background, Managed Comics is getting better, and then, you know, by summertime, we will just have a super solid system we don't have to worry about. A lot of the quirks and problems right now, like our inventory systems getting all screwed up, are a thing that will sort itself out over time.
Yeah. Everything changes in life, and you adapt or you don't. Mm-hmm. And I've always found that even if you like the way a thing was before, there's no use harping over it. Well, it used to be like this because it's not anymore. Yeah. And that I don't mean just technology. Right. I mean everything in life. So, you know, you roll with it, and then this is for the better for us and for the better for you.
Let's hope.
And it'll get better and better and better.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for bettering.
And keep bettering comics.
I thought you were going to say, and keep getting better.
No.
That's fine.
This has been Contest of Challengers. Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics. Challengers is located at 1845 Northwestern Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago. 773-278-0155. Keep up to date with new releases and events at challengerscomics.com. Like Challengers Comics on Facebook, follow @Challengers on Twitter, and help fund this podcast at patreon.com/challengers.